Please welcome Lonnie Millsap. He is a gag cartoonist who's been nominated for 2 Reuben Awards, as well as the Thurber Award, which of course is named for Columbus's own James Thurber. And his cartoons have appeared in the New Yorker magazine over 80 times, and you can find his regular comic Bacön, and that has an umlaut in it, by the way. But if you want to find out what letter it's over, you're going to have to go read his comic, which you should do anyway. You can find his regular comic Bacön on Go Comics. And Lonnie has self-published 13 books of cartoons since 2010. And I certainly hope that some of his work ethic will rub off on me for sure today. So please welcome Lonnie Millsap.
Thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm a gag cartoonist. What he said, I've been doing it since 2011 professionally. Do I have the keyboard or the mouse? Okay. I'm not used to speaking in front of a lot of people, so be patient with me. And thank you very much for your comic earlier today. I didn't finish it yet, but I appreciate that. So, I want to show you how to do gag cartooning and they create the most cartoon bang for your buck. I've never really done multi-panel cartoons, but I want to go to the next picture here. My background was explained to you by Ben. There's some more of it right here. Luckily, I'm a CXC special guest this year, which I've never been before, and I'm glad to be here, so thank you, everybody in Columbus. I've done cartoons for the New Yorker magazine since 2018. I've been in there about probably over 90 times since then. It's been very lucky that I got in. I appreciate that I've made it in. The 2-time Reuben Award nominee, I want to put an asterisk there because it's the online short form, so it's not the biggest award, but it is, one of the nominations. I was also nominated for the Thurber Prize this year, which was very surprising and made me very happy. And my comic strip is bacön because it has an umlaut, and so I wanted to pronounce it incorrectly for everybody. My influences are, from when I was younger or whatever, are listed up on the screen here. Joe Martin. We'll go with the bacön. Those were one of the first cartoon books that I got when I was younger. And the sense of humor clicked with what I do. I did not have a drawing style then, yet, but these things made me laugh. Also, Joe Martin, who did Mr. Boffo. I was lucky enough to play basketball with someone who worked with his son, and we corresponded a little bit, and I feel very lucky. But the loose drawing style and sort of the absurd type of humor that he always had inspired me even more than like a Gary Larson who did The Far Side, people like that. I sort of vibe more with Joe Martin. And then Gary Panter was one of my teachers between high school and college. And he's the reason why I do cartoons. He's the one who told me to collect sketchbooks and keep drawing. And if he wasn't alive, I wouldn't be here. So I always give a lot of credit to him. And then John Callahan, and I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's a quadriplegic, and so and he still drew the funniest stuff that there could ever be, and all of his cartoons were like this, So I was lucky enough back in 2010, 2011 when I put out my first book of cartoons. Gary Panter I was still in touch with, and they put me in an exhibition in Baltimore at the American Visionary Art Museum. And they actually had my work by Callahan, and it was sort of the biggest honor. And so now this is what I do. Okay, so since it's supposed to be kind of a class, I want to let you know that when you create gag tunes, for me, creating cartoons in a box helps. There's sometimes people can just sort of be all over the place. For me, it helps sort of contain the space so I can sort of make this space, use all the space, so I can, use every inch of whatever space I'm going to use. So boxes help. Now, I want to consider this sort of an open conversation with everybody. Is everyone in here a cartoonist? Okay, so, everything I'm going to be telling you is rudimentary to you all, but are you all single panel cartoonists, gag cartoonists? Does anyone do things in a different way that they could recommend for other people too? Anybody? I can just, no? Well, I use the square. I work with inside the square. I know that other people, sort of have to sort of figure out a way to get to what they want to draw, and I just wanted to know if there might be other people with a different process. I know your process is unusual. But, well, I'll move on to the next thing then. Is it 15 minutes yet? Okay, so the tools that I use to create my gag cartoons now is Procreate. Initially, during the beginning of everything that I would ever do, it was always pen on paper. I didn't really use pencil much because my style was very loose. And I wanted to mention that all my cartoons, many versions of them are in the back. I did not show the gags because I'll let you all come up with your own gags. But so, for me, in my sketchbooks and stuff, I even use pen in my sketchbooks, but I know that sometimes people tend to have, it's not necessary to have a sketchbook to come up with a gag cartoon or any cartoon. Any pieces of loose paper, anything you can do just to get it down. There's a cartoonist friend of mine, his name is Jim Benton. He will write down a gag cartoon, and he said he has a trash can that he just throws them in, and then he pulls out the idea and sketches it. It's just random. So he just has an endless amount of cartoons. I'm not as prolific as him, but he's one of the best cartoonists who does this kind of stuff. Sketchbooks work for me because at times, I'm prolific in the amount of work that I do, in the ideas that I come up with. There are times where I'll come up with 10 cartoons ideas in an hour, and then there'll be times where I can't think of things for like 2 weeks. So the sketchbooks are a good way to record everything. I can, when I'm working on the books, because like Ben said, I've had 13 books. I can refer back to the older sketches and come up with stuff for new books, or refer and realize I can change things. It's like almost an endless supply of gag ideas. Does everyone in here have sketchbooks? Like, is that just is there anyone who does not, who draws? And is there a reason, or like why would you? I'm looking at you. You don't draw that much? Oh, okay. Well, I understand. But some people don't. Pen is the thing for me. I understand the pencils for other people. I don't do anything that's like kind of perfect at all. So I think with pencil and different layers of trying to get it perfectly correct is not really my thing. I'm more of a loose drawer, like sort of the way that I was taught. My whole life is spent trying to mimic Gary Panter. So it's don't mean to, it just happens. So gag cartooning for me is telling the whole story at one time. I initially started doing sort of 4-panel cartoons. And, it would always be the 3 panels and then the 4th panel leading to sort of a joke. And for me, that tended to be kind of when I was doing it. I'm not saying that the system of doing that is this, but when I was doing it, it would be kind of like dad jokey, kind of finishing and yuck at the end or whatever. And it's better for me just to do a single panel and to get all the yuck out of the way at one time, I guess. I never at the beginning thought that it would tell a story that maybe it was a story of something leading to it or something leading from the situation that's in the cartoon. I think a successful gag cartoon is one that you don't have to over-explain or tell people what it means. And a lot of what I do at times will go over people's head, and that's fine. I can understand them all. I guess I do them for me. So, but yeah, I will explain. So my girlfriend Crystal is right here. I will explain some of my cartoons to her, and she'll get them then. But it's but nobody else. Yeah, I will not explain them to anybody else. Well, she books my plane tickets and stuff, so she's. So, I think the idea, of doing a gag cartoon is not being too obvious in the cartoon. There's a lot of times they're not jokes. If they're too obvious and everybody gets it and it's not, it's just not going to have any punch to it. You want to just try to have something that can hit you or comes out of left field. Not too far out of left field, or else it is just considered art, I guess, and not cartoons to me, but that's just me. Where do ideas come from? For me, they just sort of come from whatever situation I'm in, wherever I am. I think it's a good idea, like if you want to be a gag cartoonist, just to sort of note different things around you, people watch, watch situations that happen that you would never think should happen, For me, I'll probably come up with the cartoons about like lantern flies, because I have a phobia of bugs, and you all in Ohio have these lantern flies, and it's the most frightening thing in the world, but it could be funny if one lands in your hair or something. I don't know. It's a good idea too, if you're trying to figure out your ideas, to try to remember them immediately. Sketching is not the idea all the time, to put your ideas down. For me, I text myself a lot of my cartoons. And I wish I could do that while I was in the shower, because that's where all my ideas come up. And I lose ideas between the shower and the pen. I know that there's some erase boards that you can mount in your shower, but I'm not. I just can't. But my best cartoons have, been in the bathroom, and I've never, not one of them is in any of my books. So, and I wish they would have made it. I'm talking too fast. I'm going to start talking more slowly, because my time is moving very slow up here. You didn't tell me I was talking fast. You just pointed at me. Okay, so here's a couple of, that was creative. So I'm going to go back on that, I don't want to overdo it, but, that's, should have put a couple of those in. She was like, oh, you're being too gimmicky. I was like, oh, well, So, there's a lot of, I mentioned how I like Gary Panter, and cartoonists like that. I always sort of like sort of the rougher kind of, in my mind, it would be sort of a punk rock style of cartoons. Gary Panter was considered like the grandfather of punk rock art. And so I've always kind of liked kind of the rough lines. Now, this cartoon in the background of this is the first one that I ever got into the New Yorker magazine, and that was in 2018. I switched up my drawing style there, and it's still rough. It's not very polished or anything. Not much has changed. The only thing that I changed to do New Yorker cartoons is to put 5 fingers on the hands, and then I changed the eyes. So I'll go back. I'm not doing the curtain thing on purpose, but so I have Google, sort of the eyes are just sort of big Google eyes on everything I do. And normally I draw everything with only 3 fingers. That's the thing. And so when I got to the New Yorker magazine, they told me, they said, draw, I'm afraid of drawing hands. So they say draw hands with 5 fingers to make them look more realistic and make the eyes not so Saturday morning cartoony. So if you all are thinking about submitting there, this is what they're going to tell you if you have googly eyes and 3 fingers. But coming through college, I went to UCLA for art school. I was always just kind of a B student, so I didn't really stand out in this, and there was no cartoon career for me coming out of college. First of all, I'm so old that there were no computers then, so I didn't know how to make a book until there were computers. Then I learned Photoshop and all that. But in college, they always said that my fingers looked like sausages when I would draw them on hands. I was never able to sort of get the bony things in the fingers right. So I think a cartoonist is about the only thing that I could have been. So thank you for not leaving yet. I put a couple of sample gag cartoons here. One is by, excuse me, Keith Knight. He has like 3 or 4 different comics. His single panel gags are called Think. He does a cartoon called The K Chronicles, The Nightlife. He had a TV show called Woke that's based on his life. And he's a very good friend of mine. But I always liked his style, the loose line work that he does. It's very consistent throughout what he does, so it's kind of messy neat, and it's not a thing where, if you do gags or whatever, that you have to think about, how you have to get everything perfect. I think composing see, Keith uses the box right here. Composing with inside of that space is a thing, trying to use the space unless you don't want to. I wish I brought earlier examples, but when I was brand new during my first book, in drawing inside the square, it was always drawing in the middle of the square and not thinking about composition. And then, that part came later and I was like, oh, what was I doing? So that's my recommendation, if you want to write gag cartoons so that people can read them, so that your print, is so that someone can read it. It can be sloppy and neat at the same time, like what Keith is showing you right here. He's going to be mad that I said it that way, but I'll let him know face to face. Now here's Jim Benton. Excuse me. He is, to me, about one of the funniest cartoonists that there can be. He's super prolific in the amount of stuff. He switches up styles. He submitted to the New Yorker one time and got in that time and moved on. It wasn't, a great deal to him, but he knows how to draw from every angle. He knows how to compose the space that he's using. and he doesn't need a square, so he's even better than me. And yeah, I think he's super funny. It took me a long time to find my drawing style, and I think as a gag cartoonist, and maybe some people just have it right away, but I look back on my work, and there's a point where I did not have a style, and then kind of all of a sudden I did, and it was from drawing, so much, and I just had sketchbooks, and like I said, at that time there were no computers, so those sketchbooks weren't going anywhere. But there were a lot of kind of errors, I think, in trying to figure out what style it was, and it was more of trying to force mine to look like somebody else's, as opposed to just sort of, you can like someone else's work and sort of have a nod to it, but copying somebody's thing is not the best, I think it works at first just so that you can get your drawing licks, but your own style will grow out of it, I do think too that in doing gag cartoons, that the writing can sort of outshine whatever the drawing is, because if you're funny, you're funny, there's a few cartoons, that just use kind of stick figures. I can't even remember their names right now, but at one point there were like 4 or 5 of them that I followed that were super popular, and I mean they were just stick figures, For me, my style is off-putting to some people, I'll tell the story how, yeah, she's heard this stuff a 1,000 times, so I apologize. I got an email from somebody, and their email address was fuckofflonniemillsap@gmail.com. Yeah, and I got an email from that, and it was kind of when I was newer in my career, and it was kind of funny because they bullet pointed how bad my cartoons were and all the reasons. Yeah. So it was that, and it looks like this, So I was, this is what I do. So, I called Keith Knight, and I said, well, I think it was a death threat, but it wasn't. But it felt like one. I'd never been criticized. I'm not really one to ask for critiques and stuff, although I should be, but I don't know. I think it's sort of working sort of alone over all the years that, I just figured I'd do what I do and whatever happens, happens. Now, when they bullet pointed this stuff, I actually read it. None of it really held up, though. It wasn't anything that I was like, oh, they have a point. They didn't have a point. I did get apology emails later from a couple of people who sent emails like that. One person said that they had a drinking problem and that they recovered and hey, I've been seeing your work all these years, and you know what, I kind of like it and I'm sorry. And I was like, okay. And it might have been the guy, it might have been the F-off guy, but if I ever see him in the street, I'm bigger than him. But I would say in finding your style, trial and error is important. Like I said, it's not going to happen at the very beginning. Every cartoonist that you'll ever see, their stuff looks different as they get older, and you go to like Charles Schulz, you go to Keith Knight, you go to any one of these people that have been around, stuff doesn't stay exactly the same. And I think, because they wanted to look like they wanted to look, and I don't know, sometimes it might be saving time or you getting used to drawing what you do. It changes. I've tried to keep mine kind of the same, but there's been some changes over time. So there's been a lot of errors, but that's how it goes. So Also, in doing gag cartoons, and when I say pulling the whole idea together, you have to make sure sort of the gag works with the cartoon that you're doing. The gag on this cartoon is, where have you been? You look delicious, and the stripes and all, and I explained the cartoon. I'm sorry, but I lied. But this is in my latest book actually, but I actually submitted this one to the New Yorker like 10 times, because I just felt like it should be there, but it didn't work out, and sometimes you can do that. If you submit to the New Yorker, go ahead and resubmit stuff, because, sometimes they just don't choose it because it's not the right time, so just keep that in mind. But yeah, sort of pulling the whole thing together for me was trying to figure out, the right way to sort of put my gags together, to pull it together as far as putting them in a book or submitting them to different places. I'm not the best at submitting to a lot of different places, but putting the book together, it was a thing where I did my research as far as going to bookstores and libraries and sort of seeing what the process of putting the book together was, like what was on the inside cover, what acknowledgments, what copyright information you have to put, those kind of things were important, and I was able to do that from the very first book. So the very first one was a black and white book that I did. It was like 144 pages. It had, all the copyright information on there that was necessary. I got that, everything, this was before print on demand for me. So I had 1,000 books that went from the floor to the ceiling for a long time. And I had 14 hits on a website that I put together. I would be happy when there'd be like 30 people seeing my website a month. I'd be like, wow, they're from Denver, what are they thinking about? How did they see this? And, I was so happy to do it. Websites aren't the thing as much now as they were sort of beginning when I was doing all this, but it was always just trying to sort of get out there to, pulling it together and having finished product is important, Now, I use print on demand right now. I use Kindle Direct Publishing, which is part of Amazon. I'm conflicted about Amazon a little bit, but that's what I use. So, when you print on demand, you can be vain. You can do your single panel gags, you can put a book of them together, you can do it for your friends and have it not cost hardly any money. And have them be your test subjects and stuff. Making a gag cartoon for me is almost like joking around with your friends. Like everybody has a group of friends that they can joke around with and make laugh. That's to me what a gag cartoon is. A lot of people don't take the opportunity to just sort of write down what they're joking about. I'm just sort of lighthearted about a lot of stuff and kind of goofy, but I just put that into words, and at times it works out for me. But if you use print on demand, it's just a way, it could be a vain way to get your stuff together so you can see what would look and if you think it could sell to other people, does anyone else here have books? Everyone does? Or no? I figure everyone would. I just want to know from you all some stuff. I'm gonna ask. It's gonna be a Q&A, but it's gonna be going out that way. Can you get out my book for me? I'm gonna hand around my latest book just so you can get an idea of what the jokes are. If you could just hand it to this gentleman here and just take a look for a second and let it sort of weave around the room, So I may have come to the end already. I don't know. So I have come to the end already. So, hopefully I've given some kind of information here that you can take with you to sort of help you on your journey if this is something that you want to do. It's something that I truly love. I know that Gag Cartooning, right now especially is kind of very helpful. Mine is not, what I do is not topical or political because I choose for that to be. But there are some cartoonists out there that I'm kind of really enjoying right now. Like Clay Jones is this one guy that I met at Small Press Expo last week for the first time, and his cartoons have been incredible, and I lean away from political and topical because I want people to appreciate what I do for what I do 20 years from now and not wonder who somebody is or who is he referring to or this kind of thing. And there's other people that do it so much better than that I do, that I appreciate the work that they do. Right now, I think I will just open up to questions if there are any. Go ahead.
Lonnie,
Yes.
thanks for being here today. So I came in a couple minutes late, and I don't know if you covered this already, but have you've always self-published and you just never tried to pursue anything else?
This is, I will go way back. So back in college, what? You have one? Oh, I have to repeat the question. I'm sorry. Did everyone hear the question? Okay, I'm not going to repeat it. Thank you. So there was a point when I was in college where I had access, Gary Panter was my teacher. He was best friends with Matt Groening from The Simpsons. He introduced me to him, this before The Simpsons, when he was doing a cartoon called Life in Hell. I was doing zines then, and I thought I was hot stuff. That arrogance of 20 years old, If any of you are 20, I apologize. Okay, I don't mean, it's just that, we're old and we learn, But, and so I was submitting, cartoons then. I submitted to the New Yorker and got rejected, and that was it. They don't know what they're talking. There was always that reaction that I had back then. I think I was even submitting to Weekly World News and those kind of things. So I did submit back then for a little while. Nothing ever happened. I made zines. I didn't know what could happen from them because there was no outlet that I knew of. So at a point I relegated myself to just sort of drawing and working a regular job. I worked my first book. It was like there was like a 30-year break in between the zines and the first book. And it was that's when the computer age caught up. I caught up with that, and I was able to make a book. I've only submitted to the New Yorker except for one time. I submitted to Playboy, and that was the final print issue, and it got in there, and it was a New Yorker reject. But yeah, so my plan over time still is to submit to various things, but I've been kind of spoiled. I was lucky. I know there's people that submit to the New Yorker, and some never get in. Luckily enough, I do this comic strip that these are from. It's called, the one Bacon. It's been on Go Comics since 2016. So the people at the New Yorker were aware of what I did, and they gave me notes then when I submitted to the New Yorker, and I got my first cartoon in there, or they bought my first one after about 3 weeks. So I didn't have to. All this other work sort of led to that, so I didn't have to have that whole thing go on with the New Yorker too. So I hope I answered your question. I can be long-winded.
I just, I just didn't know if there was an end game beyond self-publishing.
Well, there is, and you know what? Everyone around me has publishers now. But this is the thing, getting a publisher now kind of means you're still doing your own work, So they're publishing it for you, but you're booking your own tours. You're doing your appearances and stuff. The same thing that I do for myself, they do. Now the contracts are all kind of standard now, where you might get like maybe 25 grand, and then if you do well, then you're gonna get one later.
That's a heck of an advance.
Isn't it?
For a cartoon.
Well, it isn't it. It is good, but so many people do not reach the second book.
Right.
So it is. So I think the thing that I'm looking for is to get a publisher that sort of really has my back, because there's some of those cartoonists out there that have publishers that will push their work. But even I was at Small Press Expo last weekend, and there were cartoonists there who were talking about how they did not feel support from the companies, and they would have 3-book deals, and the marketing would not sort of support what they wanted to do. So they're just signing people sort of like throwing spaghetti against the wall, something's gonna stick, and so you have to find kind of the right one. So the end deal, yes, is to get one, but I have to find management that is right for me. Yeah. So right now, self-publishing is good. I would say you're a cartoonist, do conventions. I do conventions. This is better than convention, but so San Diego Comic-Con, stuff like that. I'm sort of all over the place. So, and book sales there sort of warrant me getting a lot of them printed. So, any other questions?
Yes. Is your making like the daily one, like Free Range, Speed Bomb, Uclick?
Mine on Go Comics, yeah. Well, it's 3 times a week on Go Comics. So yes, I don't have to do daily, but yeah, Monday, Wednesday, Friday since 2016. Yeah. So.
How many do you do in like a batch?
For the New Yorker?
Or like for bacon?
For bacon, it's kind of different. You don't submit, like the New Yorker is like a once weekly thing. Like for bacon, I've put cartoons on there that, the ones I've submitted to them that are running now, I submitted maybe 3 weeks worth at one time. But, they're not all new all the time, and I don't have to. But I always I do try to make sure that they're Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, there's something there for somebody to read. It's I haven't missed any time. It was very satisfying to have them reach out to me at the beginning, and that was a weird thing, because I can't remember how it happened, but they asked if I would be interested in being on Go Comics, and then the stuff appears in other places, and but yeah, so sometimes I submit the day of, or the day before actually, but it just ahead of whatever that day is going to be. Yeah. So, any other questions? Hi.
So, like the tone of your bacon strips and then the New Yorker comics are really different.
They are.
But I was wondering how, do you ever take what the New Yorker doesn't buy and put it as a bacon strip?
I sure do. I sure do. It'll be less than that. I sure do. Yeah. There's times that there's cartoons that I really, really want to get into New Yorker sometimes, and I will hold off and resubmit or whatever. But at a point, there's so many cartoons that I do for the New Yorker. They need to be in a book so that people can see them. They just look a little different. I try to keep the same sensibility in all my cartooning, whether it's a New Yorker or bacon. So, hi.
Do you have a favorite cartoon that you've made? Do you have a top 5 or number 1?
That I've done?
That you've done?
Okay, I'll go back. Let me go back through. There's one up here. The gag is not up here, but the drawing, let's see. I don't want the curtain thing to happen. So we've seen that enough. This one. you know, the joke on this is these guys are like the you know, primitive astronauts, you know. But the joke is like, you know, people, you know, well, how did they get up there? You know, there's like, it raises a lot of questions, you know. But yeah, this has always been one of my favorite ones. Yeah. You had it?
Yeah, so if something is published in the New Yorker, you still retain ownership to that and you can self-publish that in your own book or no longer?
I can't, you know, they have rights to it for, I can't remember. I think it's like less than a year.
Okay.
Yeah, but I can do that. And the ones that I put in my books that were supposed to be New Yorker cartoons, I make them like this and not New Yorker looking, you know. But yeah, they don't retain rights for long. So if it was in the New Yorker, you'll just actually put that into your self-published book, or you'll redraw it and put it in? No, I won't put a New Yorker in there. No.
Never? Okay.
No.
I got you.
No. If it's one I submit and they don't want, I will. But yeah,
Yeah,
if it's
okay, that makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
So, you got a question? How many times do I submit to the New Yorker?
No, I mean, how many times can if you want to submit something, how many times do it? Is there a limited amount of times? Or?
To submit to them?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's unlimited. So if you submit there, the deadline is noon Tuesdays Eastern time. Yeah, so I submit, you know, there's different thoughts on submitting, you know. Personally, I submit 5 a week. There's a lot of people that do 10 or more per week. That's sort of above my, that's like a full-time job, you know. Also, I do resubmissions and changing captions and stuff sometimes, and at times they will buy those. And when you change the captions, sometimes it makes a cartoon better. You know, it sort of streamlines what you're doing. And so, yeah, so it's unlimited. There's maybe 8 weeks of the year where they say they're not accepting any that day, you know, but yeah, it's a regular thing, unlimited. Yeah. Any other questions? Oh.
Hey, Lonnie.
Hey.
Is there, do you know how many times you've, like the most you've ever resubmitted one comic, or how many times you've redone it over and over again to try and get it just right?
You know what, I've probably, there's probably been some comics that I've resubmitted maybe 8 or 9 times. Yeah. There's just some that I just feel like, I don't, you know, you want. Not in a row. Not in a row. But I mean, I would do 3 times, 3, 4 times in a row, and then sometimes I'll retire it, you know, and it'll go in the book because I still think it's worth it, you know. But yeah, there's they bought one recently that I gave a break to for a while, you know, but it was one that I felt strongly about, you know, and they finally bought it, you know.
So I have a question, a follow-up question.
Uh-huh.
If that's okay.
Yeah.
So when you've resubmitted it 3 or 4 times, you say, okay, this is done, they're not going to accept it, I'm going to put it into my book. Which version, how do you pick which version of the gag you want to put in? Is it always the most recent one?
No. I'll go with what I personally think is the funniest. And you know, in submitting to the New Yorker too, I do try to make sure that I submit to my sensibility and not what I think is going to be New Yorkery. You know, I think following your sense of humor, if you're doing gag cartoons, is important. And so when you say, you know, pick the funniest one, the gags can all be very similar, or the caption can be very similar. So it might not necessarily be the last one, but they will all sort of convey the same joke all the time. Yeah. So, yeah. So, oh, thank you. Any more questions? Oh.
I just was very happy when you put up the clip in.
Yeah.
Because when I was a little boy, one of my dad's colleagues gave me some of his books. And I mean, I was too young. I didn't get most of them.
Yeah.
They were so funny. And
the way they were drawn, yeah.
And that just, and there are a few other influences of my own, like, sense of humor that or from that time when I was like given like material that was too deep for me.
Right.
Swimming, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
But I got later, so and even in my job recently, I hung up one of them.
Really?
Because I'm like, I gotta share this because people need to know.
Yeah, I just, that was such a big influence to me. There were other cartoonists that I didn't mention that I think of now too that were even more kind of political cartoons, like Ron Cobb was, we used to have those books like laying around my house when I was a kid, but they were incredible, but I would never be able to draw like that. But they were great. So I think I've reached the end of my time. I'm pretty close, right? If anyone has any more questions, if not, I can release you all to get some. Oh, wait.
So, what got you started drawing? Was it natural or?
Yeah, I always kind of sketched around. I think I realized it's sort of the middle of high school. I would sketch like probably most people do around the edges of my notes during classes and stuff, and it was always tanks and bombs and people explode. I don't know, just that kind of stuff. So the reason that I got into Gary Panter's class was it was between high school and college, and my mother said, "Oh, I put you in a cartooning class," and I was like, "Oh, really?" And it was just to keep me from just doing nothing all summer, and it was the best thing that could have ever happened, from me being in touch with, having him in that class when I was 17 and, and he was like 28 and he's like 70 something now, I've known him for like most of my whole life, and, just such a big influence. And, even like if you get a chance to watch the Pee Wee, documentary, he was in there and everything. And it was just good to see him. So.
Thank you, Mom.
So, yeah, she's a great mother. Yes, yes. So thank you all. I think that's about it for today. I appreciate it.